Good afternoon, everyone. It's 3:30 and time to begin our show today. And happy Wine and Cheese Day to everyone. That's the reason for this show. We're going to talk today about wine and cheese pairings, and even more specifically about certain types of cheese, as well as perhaps a little bit about how cheese is made, and so on and so forth. So, our presenter today is Joe Villa, who many of you know, and this is being orchestrated on behalf of the Pennsylvania Wine Society. And I will ask that everybody keep their microphones on mute. However, we're going to try something different today because everyone's probably got a half a dozen cheeses, and we had asked you to come armed with your favorite noble grape type of wine, and then we would talk about pairing up cheese with those types of wine. And if you have something other than that, that's fine too. We'll still talk about it, but uh, on at various intervals today, Joe will ask for commentary from the audience, and if you simply push your space bar down and hold it down, it will unmute you for the time during which you wish to speak, and then you can lift the space bar up and it will mute you again. So we're going to try that and see if we can make this a little more interactive today. And in the meantime, I also have to advise you that this is being recorded. If you've got if an aversion to that, then you would leave now, or your attendance will signify that you approve of the recording. So, Joe, if you would start telling us about wine and cheese pairings.
Well, thank you, Marty. Well, welcome everyone. Um, Welcome to National Wine and Cheese Day. Let's get this thing started, right? Now, when I was doing this presentation, guys, just so you know, there is a lot of information out there on, the different cheeses. So to kind of narrow this down for an hour, hour and a half presentation, yeah, we'll see what we came up with here, but hopefully you can pick up on some of these things here. Oh, my presentation isn't.
Oh no, it's up, Joe. Oh, okay.
It wasn't coming on my end though.
Ah, there it is. All
No,
right.
it's. You can see that?
I was able to see National Wine and Cheese Day. It looks a little sluggish. Okay. Can you see it?
All right. National Wine and Cheese Day. There we go. Wow. Talk about systems slowing up for me. Sorry about that, guys. Um, I came up with, I think, 6 different cheeses. Sue and I went out yesterday to the cheese shop, and, going to a cheese shop with Joe is like, the next worst thing is going to a wine shop with Joe. Um, it's kind of hard, I want one of everything. So, I came up with 6 different choices. And oddly enough, I walked away with one type that I didn't, or that I wanted, and anyway, didn't end up with. But the day actually encourages us to try different wines and cheese combinations, maybe that you haven't really tried before. What I'm talking about is, get away from, if you're used to the standard American, the standard, kind of neutral cheeses. There are regional cheeses from around the world that are going to offer a variety of flavors, to match up with all kinds of different wines. Say cheese.
I always say
You, Go ahead.
I always say peaches.
Peaches. Well, back to that old typical say cheese, anyway, makes you smile. It's supposed to. Come on, I'll say peaches from now on. Um, what I pulled up here was 2 different kind of cheese-ograms, if you will, to match up wine. But, my problem is because they're literally, I want to say hundreds, maybe thousands. of these different charts out there. Now, depending on who you're talking to and what they're promoting or whatever, I'm not sure, but it seems like you can get some different answers across the board. So I'm not saying they're wrong, but what I'm suggesting here today is don't be afraid to kind of open that door. I don't know that there's any one to say black and white answer in this matching. Now, what we'll do here today is kind of show you, or hopefully be able to match up, light, medium, heavy, in the same ways I want to think that we're going to do with our wine or with any other kind of food. I do want to stress, I've always stressed in my classes, I never want my wine to overpower the food. I want my wine closer to, believe it or not, closer to a glass of water, if it has to be, but I never want it to be overpowering my food. So even when it comes to these cheeses, it kind of gets weird because depending on the specialty cheese you get into, the flavors can get kind of funky and wild. Speaking of which, my Pinot Noir, I have a Burgundy opened here today, a 2012 Burgundy, and it is dead as a doornail. Anyway, there will be no cheese that can pair with that thing, for whatever that's worth. All right, now we did forward out, there were a couple PDFs that were forwarded out. One of them is Wine and Food, and giving full credit to this gentleman, Roger Baumrich. He has a website, and at the end of this, you can go to his website, and he has a pairing guide, as well as many others. There are, they're for you to, check out and peruse, but we're not really going to be talking about. I just want to mention that there are some really nice materials, good materials out there that I would recommend. If you noticed, here again, I'm dead in the water. Can you guys see anything moving?
Yes, we can. There
we go. This is the guide that I really kind of laid heavy into, the Wine and Cheese Appreciation Guide from the Dairy Association or the Dairy Export Council. They, pretty much broke down the basic types, but pretty much staying domestic. So, we'll delve into, and this is what I say, when we talk about the world of wines, it's no different than the world of cheeses. In this country, we've taken that world of cheese and turned it inside out. We've we don't maybe make authentic as they would in certain regions of the world. And again, we'll talk a little bit more about that coming up. But cheese, been enjoyed for thousands of years. As grapes are to wine, milk is to cheese. If you think about that, basically they're preserved foods. These are things that you can consume pretty much throughout the year. Both of these cheeses and wines go from a younger stage into a stage of, maturation that sometimes might not be, a pleasure to the palate, but kind of like my Burgundy that I have over there. That's unfortunate that I let it go too long, but I'm not saying that happens to cheeses. But cheese and wine, the quintessential combo, kind of each makes the other taste better. They go hand in hand, and both have these century-old traditions. If it grows together, it goes together. And I can't really stress that enough, that think about it, if they're making wines in certain regions of the world or cheeses, they are going hand in hand in that particular area. And it makes perfect sense for us to be out here matching pretty much in that same regard. Both are natural products, and again, frequently consumed together because they do kind of match, but be cautious because not everything works in the cheese and wine matches. But again, that's kind of the fun of pairing. It can be enjoyed in a raw state, little to no preparation, pretty much just open them and as is. Best selections are almost always based on individual taste. I can't stress that enough, guys. We can talk about what I recommend, what these charts recommend. It's always going to boil down to what you pour in your glass or what you're cutting up on your plate. And again, if you kind of keep some of the basic principles we're going to talk about here today in mind, you'll be able to better match up for yourself and not so much depend on, someone else, just kind of using these guidelines. And as I said, there really are no hard or strict rules in this. I'm tasting a whole variety of different things over here on this plate, and I have 6 different wines here today. Speaking of which, I'm just going to cover real quick. I have a Gewürztraminer. I have a Semillon or a Gewürztraminer from Finger Lakes, a Semillon Sauvignon Blanc Muscadel from Columbia Valley. That's a Bordeaux blend, by the way, white Bordeaux blend. The white Burgundy, I have Very Classe. This is 2014. That's actually drinking pretty good. Regali Alley Rosé. It's a chairman selection. So I broke out of the rule here, Marty. It's the rosé isn't really a traditional variety. And then the Marsanne that I have is a Pinot Noir, is not drinkable. Oh, the one thing I forgot, I threw the Herman Weimer Cab Franc in there too. So I had a Cab Franc. And thank goodness this way I at least have something red that's drinkable. Anyway, there are no hard or strict rules. And if you look at what I just did there, even throwing those varieties out here in front of me with these cheeses, which we'll discuss here too, as we go through this, could be interesting. I have no blue cheeses on my plate today.
What? No.
Let's talk about some cheese history. Try to kind of get through the hard stuff so we can get maybe to some of the fun stuff of picking up a glass and tasting. If that's okay. Obviously, you guys are going to be tasting, but 8 to 10,000 years ago, domestication of milk-producing animals. This is pretty important stuff because where we're getting our milk is important. But 6,000 BC, ceramic remains of cheese strainers are found. Around 100 BC, cheese made many parts of the Roman Empire, and of course, they spread cheese making throughout, including England. Which is important when it comes to things like cheddar, some other things. 1100 to 140 or 1453, 5, somewhere in there. Monks make and improve cheeses pretty much in the monasteries of Europe. In the 10th century, Italy is pretty much the cheese-making center of Europe. Cheese making flourishes in Europe now an established food. 1615, introduction of cheese to Asia, European expansion. Now that's kind of important because Asia really isn't a cheese area. It's really only due to, you want to say, European expansion that the cheeses are there, and not to mention the U.S. pretty much has shared a lot of cheese making with them. Cheese making when we get to processed cheese. 1620, pilgrims included cheese on the Mayflower, and pretty much was the first time cheese came to the New World. Now, shortly after this, now we're talking 1620 into the 1600s, 1700s, as people started to settle the U.S., they brought cheese making with them. But it was, remember now, this is in the time of settlement, that it pretty much was only made on local farms. And I'm pretty sure then it started to be used as a barter tool then thereafter as well. Some big cheese names here kind of staying in these dates, but if you've ever heard of Gorgonzola, one of those big blue cheeses out there, 879. So it has, it's been around for a while. 1070, Roquefort from France. 1500, cheddar. As we mentioned, the Romans pretty much spread everything's better with cheddar. Cheddar really comes from the town of Cheddar in Somerset, England. 1597, Parmigiano Reggiano is from Emilia, Italy. Gouda. Every one of these has its own regional origin, and depending on the region, it can get pretty broad, it can be big, or very specific. And when it comes to things like Parmigiano Reggiano, that's a very specific area and cheese, not to mention its production, and it's pretty famous stuff. is also not cheap. You know, it comes with a price. So 1864, this is an important date. Louis Pasteur discovers pasteurization. Now, later I'm going to mention, raw milk to you, because in cheese production, when pasteurization comes along, this actually kind of kills or neutralizes certain maybe goodies that come with natural cheese production. So after this, obviously, with that comes mass manufacturing of cheese, mass manufacturing. Now that means, for the masses, there was a great demand for cheese. There still is today. Uh-oh.
What?
Is that with or without? Some might understand that. Go to Philly. All right. It's a cheese thing. Hey, it's cheese. Comes in a jar, but it's cheese. I wonder how many people out there eating jar cheese today. Anyway.
Is it really cheese, Joe?
Processed.
Well, so processed.
Processed. Remember, there's an end to, you start with something, but what you end up with, I'm not sure. You know what I mean. 1851, this is the pretty much the first cheese factory in the U.S., in New York, Rome, New York. And I don't know how significant that is, but when it comes to cheese and the settlement of this country, it does kind of kick off things, because when you see the numbers on how much cheese is actually produced in this country, it's really amazing. So, as the country started getting settled, and New York again was kind of a central point of cheese production, as immigrants came in, and of course, Swiss immigrants specifically, started to settle Wisconsin in 1845 and started making cheese. Now, again, this is significant because they really have kicked off in Wisconsin pretty much what we know as the cheese industry in this country. I don't know if anyone knows, the first factory in Wisconsin was actually a Limburger cheese plant. Anyone know what Limburger cheese is? Well, I don't know if that's really a question I can ask. I've never had. I seen this yesterday at my cheese store, that exact brand, and I was afraid to buy it. Anyway, 1868, first Wisconsin factory, a Limburger plant. 1880. By 1880, 216 million pounds of cheese are being produced. As demand grows and spreads with processed cheese production, by 1920, 418 million pounds are produced. 1970, now we're jumping 50 years, and quite a few things, with post-World War I, after World War II. Now in 1970, 2.2 billion pounds. 1990, 6 billion pounds. Man, where's all the cheese coming from? More than 1/3 of all milk produced in the U.S. used is to make cheese. This is that Limburger thing, famous full-bodied stinky cheese. I grew up hearing about Limburger. Now, when we're done with this, I'd love to hear if anyone has any out there today. Or if you're trying some, throughout this, I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on Limburger. But this is a cheese actually born in Belgium. And we're going to talk about this, that, we get into certain cheeses, as they were brought to this country, they can be copied. And I believe this is one that I think is still not copied, or at least they claim it's not copied. I just seen an Amish Limburger, so I don't know if it's not being copied, what that is. Again, immigrants pretty much brought this. Is it the only state? I question it, because again, I've seen it out there in PA. What makes it so pungent? We're going to talk a little bit more about this with cheeses. Cheesemakers actually cure the cheese in saltwater brine. They wash it repeatedly to keep moist and hospitable for bacteria that they smear on the surface. Brevibacterium linens. And you'll hear about this. It's a very common bacteria that's used. One of the cheeses I have today, excuse me, I believe is Emmentaler, a type of Swiss cheese that my hands still smell of it, and I've washed 3 times. The rinds of some of these cheeses are not intended to be eaten, or at least not by this Joe. They can be pretty offensive, and I love what they create on the inside. Pretty powerful stuff on the outside if you go for that direct mold or bacteria. And what makes this interesting in Limburger, and I've heard this before, is that, Brevibacterium linens also found in soil, but what makes it unique is that it's found in human skin, and specifically your feet. It's what causes your foot odor. Hey, why are you shaking your head, Mr. Marty?
It's just funny because, stinky feet smells like stinky cheese.
Where have we heard that before, right?
By the way, Laura, who is on this in the audience, is from Wisconsin.
Yeah.
Her email address is Cheesehead.
Well, I was going to say, absolutely, she's in cheese country. Go Packers. Oh, okay, never mind. And a must for all cheese lovers. I came real close yesterday, but when I seen all those other choices there, Limburger really wasn't at the top of my list. So anyway, we'll move on from that one. Now, cheese, where did cheese come from? This has kind of been the question. Well, it is really still a question. According to ancient legend, it was made accidentally by an Arabian merchant who put his supply of milk into a pouch made from a sheep's stomach. I don't want to gross anyone out here, but as he set out on the day's journey across the desert, now it's pretty hot, the rennet in the lining of the pouch, and we're going to talk about that, where that rennet comes from in the lining, combined with the heat of the sun, caused the milk to separate into curd and whey. That night he found the whey, satisfied his thirst, that was the liquid, and the cheese, the curd, had actually solidified and, had a nice flavor and actually satisfied the hunger. So it might be kind of a wild story, but so they say. All right. What is cheese? Well, it's not going to change outside of pretty much these 3 ingredients. But what is cheese? It's the product of processes to remove water from fluid milk. So think about that when you think about your milk out there. I grew up on whole milk, and it's kind of funny because I actually drink pretty much 0 or skim maybe 1%. If I drink 2% or certainly whole milk today, it is very over the top creamy to me. So just understand that cream, and when we're making cheese, is pretty much what they're separating. So if you have milk, salt, and or live microbial cultures, and that includes that rennet. We're going to talk a little bit more about that rennet coming up here. Mixes together, and that rennet actually immediately starts to curdle the milk. And of course, when you drain off the whey, the liquid, and you can pack those curds together, those solids can be packed together into different shapes. That's cheese. Now, I know that's Joe basic cheese, but, understand just kind of that simple process and how I think a lot of people can make cheese on their own. But it really does boil down to specific strains of the microbes that give each cheese variety distinct flavor. The question is, does it matter where you grow your cheese? Oh, no, you can only say that with wine, right? Does it matter where you make your cheese? Maybe that's what I'm trying to say. So think about that. What did I say? If it grows together, it goes together.
So you're saying there's no terroir associated with this cheese?
I'm believing there might be.
So
I'm pretty sure there's certain places that cannot absolutely duplicate these cheeses. So
does it have to do with the place, or does it have to do with the animal?
I think all of that, but I think boiling down to all the components, but where place really or generally isn't always talked about. Well, again, think of where these cheeses started. A lot of the domestic cheeses we eat today, Munster. Well, where's Munster from? Well, not Wisconsin. Although if the Munster, the way we spell it, M-U-E, and STER, is from Wisconsin, is domestic. If you take that E out, MUN, and make it true Munster, it's from Germany. So, it's funny how we've taken things in this country, and again, we may twist a Swiss cheese or a cheddar, but again, I'm a fan of where they originally come from. I have 2 cheddar cheeses on my plate here today. Have to mention this. The place we went to yesterday actually sells all the way up to 15-year-old, their own cheddar. They're Conestoga Yellow Shark. All right. Nothing wrong with it. It's actually pretty good. But what I actually have here is red Leicester from England. And this is, it to me is comparable, but the flavors are just completely different. And again, I would think back to, sourcing, where are the cows being raised? Where's the milk from? What's the grass they're eating? Back to terroir. So anyway, we'll keep this thing rolling. Cheese making basics. Don't want to gross anyone out, but we're talking a little bit about this. The first stage in cheese making, was accidental. Possibly. When you store something in that same and has that same those things available, it's going to naturally happen. Now, just talking about this, ruminant animals, stomachs are divided into compartments, and this is where this one, piece comes in. It's really talking about even-toed hoofed mammals that chew cud regurgitated from its rumen, cows, sheep, antelope, deer, giraffes, and the relatives. Now, what that is, it's in the fourth stomach is the home of this rennet. Because again, it kind of, it's a natural enzyme or acid.
Is it related to Joe,
What's that?
related to yeast?
No, it's an acid.
Okay.
An acid, absolute acid. So, and think about when these animals are chewing their cud and it goes into kind of that digestive system. Again, I don't know enough about 5 stomachs or but when we're talking about rennet, this particular enzyme is what's being created. And we'll talk a little bit more about these things. But adding rennet or any edible acid will curdle milk. And, this goes back to cheese making, whether they use rennet or whether they use an edible acid. Edible acid, we're talking lemon juice, vinegar, those things all cause coagulation. And the whole point of that, remember, is to separate the solid curds from the liquid whey. So whether you have, the natural with the rennet or you add lemon juice or vinegar, again, depending on where we're at in the world, type of cheese. There are cheese curds on the left, and there are some of the animals that would be able to produce milk and or cheeses. So think about, where the animals come from in the world. If they're producing milk, again, in theory, they could be producing different cheeses. Curds, I do have to mention this or talk briefly about this, obtained by coagulating milk in the process called curdling. It's that taking that the white substance in milk and pretty much solidifying it. It's used as the basis for cheese, but if anyone's out there shopping, if you ever seen, you can buy raw, cheese curds. All cheese curds are is that first step in cheese making. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, and that's why you'll probably find cheese curds out there, a flavor for everything in cheese curds, because they're kind of like just a snack.
Have you ever eaten any of those? Have you ever eaten?
Have I ever eaten cheese curds?
Yes.
Yes. I'm in Dutch country, man. We the stores around here sell, and I'm not kidding, you can go there and probably find buffalo flavored cheese curds, or whatever. It's just not for me. It's just like American cheese glorified. Well, kind of. So anyway, back to the curds. Whey. It's the liquid remaining after milk has been curdled and strained. Whey contains 95% water. It's that liquid. Remember, you consolidated everything else into the curds as far as the solids. It's mostly lactose. 20% of the milk's protein and traces of fat. Composition of whey depends on the type of cheese produced. So back to a formula, like anything else, there's no one solid way to do things. Oh, boom, boom. Composition factors, remember, season, location, where we're at in the world, the type and health of dairy cattle means a lot, so back to terroir, where it's grown, what are they eating, has everything to do with the type of cheese we're making. Raw milk, have to mention it. I did notice it in the store. No, I don't know if it was raw milk in the store that I seen. I don't know if we can we sell raw milk in the store? We can? Okay. Dairy milk that's not completely fresh and unprocessed or not pasteurized. Now think about this when we're talking about making cheese, and that cheese has different enzymes in it naturally, that when you pasteurize, you could be taking out those enzymes or neutralizing some of those things in a natural sense. And I got to say, most of the cheeses I have on my plate here today are made from raw milk. That it did state on, in the ingredients. Raw milk contains a higher level of nutrients, enzymes, minerals. If you heat treat these things, you will lower the level of vitamin C and B. Again, the enzymes are destroyed by the heat. Enzymes are necessary to absorb and digest nutrients in the milk, so that when you consume the milk, it's part of it. Research has documented, greater density in humans consuming raw milk compared with pasteurized. Unhomogenized. Look at your milk. It is indeed usually pasteurized and homogenized. Unhomogenized means, the fat in milk, don't want to get too gross, but, if you ever seen cream in milk, cream. The heavier milks will have literally a cream level or line. But unhomogenized, you'll see that fat pretty much that isn't reduced or mixed within the milk. Raw tends to have the cream line. Some cows' breeds produce larger cream line than others. Back to what they're eating. Are they eating hay or grass? Always remember to gently shake that milk container. This is back to my old days. I mean, I can remember whole milk actually having cream, actually in there. There we go. Isn't that dreamy?
And that's the stuff you use to make butter, right?
I guess, yes.
Didn't you ever make butter?
Susan is, in fact, yes. She's in churning some right now as we speak. Oh, she is not. Now I don't know kind of where to start with this, but let me keep rolling with this. Get a couple more slides in here because we have to get some wine tasting here too. Just some basic principles, and I want to talk about this with you guys because we're getting into the heart of this now. And I want you to think about this, matching wine and cheese. Is it and can it be seasonal? Like if you're out here matching, like I got to say, I didn't pull a whole lot of red wine, and there's a whole lot of reason for that too, is because I'm not a big fan of big heavy red wines with cheeses, but but think of the season we're in. We're in the summertime, and most of what I have out here is white and a rosé, and beyond that, a Cab Franc and a Pinot Noir. So my wines generally are pretty light based on the season. If I was in, I don't know, the colder months, would I have maybe pulled a Syrah and went heavier in my weight? And would that have better determined my choices of cheeses? So, think of the weight of the wine, just like, when we're talking about cheeses, and we're going to get into this, think of the weight of the wine. Some are warmer and usually a light, crisp white, maybe a little bit fruity red. And I say that more acidic, not necessarily real heavy alcohol. And again, wines with right acidity, maybe with a little chill. In the winter, maybe, the colder months, something a little heavier, fuller bodied. And what I mean by that is alcohol, tannin, something a little beefier. When you serve wine and cheese, if you're doing a professional tasting, this is, what they say, you should serve at room temperature. But, back to, we're not really judging things in a professional sense here. So what I'm doing, I mean, my whites, well, are probably now room temperature, but for the most part, I think my cheeses are at this point as well. So, serve at room temperature, just like wine. If cheese is too cold, you can't taste the more subtle flavors, may not get the full experience. Aroma. All right. Now, I don't know what you have there, guys, but you know what? I have a Gewürztraminer right here from New York State. And it's obviously Gewürztraminer. It's Wagner from New York State, Gewürztraminer. And I have some really funky cheeses on my plate. I don't know how many things here are going to really pair up with a Gewürztraminer.
We could ask some people what they have at home if you wish.
Please do, Marty.
Anybody want to share with us what you are consuming today in terms of wine and cheese?
Love to hear it.
Press down your space bar and it'll open up your mic.
I'm going to have some cheese. One of these is really funky. Man.
And it's not the Limburger because you didn't get that.
No, but it might be the Racelet.
Yeah, I know that Lynn and Bill have 8 cheeses.
All right. We need to hang together.
Yeah. Who else out there wants to share with us what they're consuming?
No one's speaking.
Yeah, I know.
Oh, come on, guys.
Are your teeth squeaking? Oh, that's not whey. That's not curds.
What's that?
They were talking about your teeth will squeak when you eat fresh curd.
Ah.
Your teeth squeak.
Okay.
I'm going to try it.
It's like teaching.
I'll just go get some curd just to try it.
It's like teaching a high school class. Nobody wants to speak.
All right.
Go ahead, Joe.
Well, and again, I'm not so sure if the Gewürztraminer is working with my cheese, but
Yeah.
oh, the second wine I have is Booty, B-U-T-Y, from Washington State. And those of you who know me know I like Washington State wines. I don't have anything California here today. The presentation was pretty much geared around domestic wines, many New York State, believe it or not. But I tried to keep my selections somewhat domestic. And this Booty is a white Bordeaux blend, actually Semillon, Sauvignon Blanc, and Muscatel. And like I said, I like my wine a little bit lighter than the cheese. I want the wine to actually cleanse my palate, to kind of, work with the cheese. Don't get me wrong. But anyway, so smell your wine and cheese. And depending on the cheese, did you try this little one on
No, I tried this one. It is delicious.
there? Is it? Okay.
Yes.
That's the fromage with garlic and herbs.
Oh my gosh, that's good.
Okay. Racelet, I think, is try that little one there. It's pretty funky. It'll stick to your fingers. I'm telling you. Flavor, smell everything. It's an important step. I mean, when we're doing this,
Don't smell that.
don't smell that one. I told you. So, I don't know if we have a wine. That might go with the Gewürztraminer. I don't know.
Okay.
Go ahead.
All right, it's Averill. Can you hear me?
We can hear you loud and clear.
Okay. We have a wonderful Chablis here, Premier Cru like Bateau by Servan, which is actually a Wygant wine. It's a beautiful wine. It's a 2018, which was a great year.
Yeah.
And we're trying the different cheeses with it. And the biggest surprise was actually basically the strongest cheese that we have here. And they're very different. Bill, what is the cheese? The name?
English Blue Stilton.
English Blue Stilton. Okay, so very, very, very strong.
Yeah.
But it's beautiful because the wine can stand up to it. They complement each other in a really delightful kind of way. So it's a big surprise, guys. Thanks.
And some of those blues are, I want to say, maybe not as maybe offensive, because sometimes I think the creaminess in some of those blues, I absolutely love. Crumbly blues, it depends, I'm not such a big fan of, but very good. Averill, what's the cuvee?
Le Cruz?
No,
Here,
the Kalen.
Oh, the Kalen, we're not there yet.
What was the cuvee? No. What's the cuvee on your Pinot? Oh, we have feedback.
On the Kalen. Go get it.
Somebody's got feedback.
Yeah, we got feedback. It's crazy. We've got two computers here in the same room. It's crazy.
All right.
Cuvée DD 97.
Cuvee DD. There we go.
You got it?
Yeah, DD. That's what I wanted to know. Cuvee DD. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm a big fan of Kalen, and you're so shocked you have a Kalen Pinot there, but
Especially that old.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'll tell you one thing.
And it's just been resting in my,
Bad.
cave for obviously 20 years or something.
Yeah.
So we'll see what it's like.
Good. I want to hear about it when we're done here, if you don't mind sharing.
Oh.
So.
We will. We absolutely will. Yeah.
Cool.
Even if it's awful, we'll tell you. We'll let you know.
Oh yeah. Hey, there's good and bad with this. So absolutely.
Yes. Yes.
Anyone else?
Okay, if you mute, I'll go back up.
Doesn't the Stilton pair well with
It's done.
What are you saying, Marty?
I was saying, doesn't the Stilton pair, isn't it supposed to pair well with port?
I'd go with Sauterne.
Oh,
See, I'm a big, when it comes to those sweet wines, I'm a huge fan of Sauterne, and there's where the different blue cheeses can get kind of interesting. But yeah, they're certainly recommended with fortified or specifically port. But yeah. All right, let's move on along here with flavor. To taste your wine alone, taste cheese alone. When tasting cheese, think about it, let it kind of melt in your mouth. Think about what you're tasting. And I've done this with each of my cheeses just prior to starting here. And I got to say, there's different textures with these. Now, what I did make a mistake in doing, shopping became a nightmare. I ended up buying all cow cheeses yesterday. I don't have a single sheep or goat's cheese here. And I was like, in the there were sections, and I walked out without any. Anyway, so try these and try the different textures and see what the different flavors are. Depending on your cheese, we're going to talk about this, the colors and maybe determining, a flavor from that. But then also try your wine and cheese together and see if they complement. It's very subjective here, guys, because see, when I'm tasting things, I know what my favorites are. I already know kind of what I like, and it's nothing wrong with, and I'm willing to try all kinds of different things.
Joe, we have a sort of a busy chat session going on while you're
Go ahead.
today.
Go ahead.
And Joyce mentions that there are organizations where they taste wines with blue cheeses. I didn't know about that.
Yeah, I mean, that's completely up to, I guess, if you're a fan of blue cheese, and you'll find that I'm probably not. Okay. So it kind of, it goes, and that's what I just said. It lends to what you're into. So where I don't favor blue cheeses, they'll always usually be present at a wine tasting in one form or another. But then you have others that just love and wouldn't go without, and try the different types. So yeah, because there are so many different types of blue cheeses out there.
As a subcategory, there's probably almost as many mustards as there are cheeses.
I may have some of those in my kitchen alone.
About 12 of them.
Yeah, she says, don't buy any more mustard.
Yeah.
Anyway.
There is a mustard museum actually in Wisconsin.
There's one in Manheim too.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Right.
It's not, anyway. More of the basic principles. White wines may go with cheeses better than reds. And again, this just goes to lending, depending on the cheese. You have to be cautious because the tannin in the red and or how old the red is. The fresher, whiter the cheese, the crisper, the fruitier the wine should be. Kind of matching, light with light. That's why I was thinking about earlier, would you consider seasonal? To me, goat cheeses are this time of year. Sauvignon Blanc and goat cheese really like comes to mind. It's like a staple in the summertime months. So, but I think one goes hand in hand with the other. Smooth fatty cheese may go well with similarly smooth, slightly oily wine. Again, think about where it's coming from and the style of wine. Just talking about this, sweet contrasts well with cheese with high acid. Now, does that mean, and this is kind of hard, because we get into talking about cheeses and picking out certain acids and how those cheeses are produced is where you can get into a lot of what I call the offensive, the real cheesiness aromas and flavors.
What are the names, Joe? What
Yeah.
are the names of some cheeses with high acid?
Well, that's what I was just trying to get into. That to think about any of your blue cheeses, and or when we get into some of these, talking about the cheeses that actually involve more of the enzymes. Hold on, we're going to get into some of these here.
All
right. Dry fresh reds for soft cheeses, especially goat. Wine and good acidity complements salty cheese. Dry champagne. And when we say champagne, I'm talking sparkling wine, but I prefer champagne because when we talk champagne specifically from France, that's where I'm going to think of, things like, Brie. What else is there? Brie. There's a number of them that have that white. If you've had these cheeses, they come in usually the round disc. But usually have a white bloomy rind on the outside, the brie types, and to me have always been really, because they have an earthiness to them, great matchups with champagne. And I can't stress enough, cheese and wine from the same region. If it grows together, it goes together. Please, please, please. It's probably the easiest way you can match wine and cheese together is start with one or the other and go in that direction. So, I mean, if you see a wine that looks interesting, a chairman selection, and you go out and buy that Aglianico, that's a chairman selection, red wine from Italy, you might want to be then searching for what kind of cheeses are they growing or producing wherever the Aglianico is made. It really doesn't, it becomes more difficult if we're out here trying to match, Lancaster County cheddar with wines that are made in southern Italy. So anyway, 4 main ideas: match the flavor intensity, balance is key, don't let the wine overpower the food or the food overpower the wine. I know it's a hard thing to do, but try to pair a strong cheese with a robust wine. April was just talking about that, don't be afraid to experiment with certain things as well. Pair like with like, match flavors, body, and texture. Kind of, the cheese has a smokiness, maybe match it up with a wine that has some smokiness. And Syrah tends to be kind of in that vein. Can't stress enough, if it grows together, it goes together. If I said it at least 4 times yet, huh? I stress this because just always try to match wines and foods from the same region. If you've ever had Manchego, one of my favorite cheeses in the world from Spain, have it with Tempranillo. see what happens when you go to Rioja and have Manchego. It's just a different world. Okay. So try to match them if they go together. Oh, here's something. Opposites attract. Now think about this when we were just talking about sweet wine and Gorgonzola, right? Your dessert wines, I prefer Sauterne, but think about Gorgonzola or any of them blue cheeses usually are off the charts in salt, so what's going to be the opposite? Salt and sweet. Think about how they might come together in that. So don't be afraid to try certain things. It doesn't always work for your taste. It's the nature of the beast here.
Well, salty cheese would match well with any wine that has acid.
Well, that would be hard for me to do with New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc. You see what I'm saying? That there's certain, if the wine has high acid, it would be it's just my own personal thing, because, well, first of all, high acid wines I have to be real cautious with, and then, like I said, blue cheeses. So, but this is where I'd love to hear from other folks too. Don't be afraid to talk about it and tell me what your thoughts are in this cheese world, please. Cheese types, we're going to get into this right now, so you have maybe a better understanding of what you're shopping for. To think about, you can feel the cheese, right? I mean, well, you know what I'm saying. The cheeses are usually refrigerated, but you can pretty much tell the texture soft, semi-soft, and hard. With that might be your flavors: mild, sharp, extra sharp. I was yesterday.
They would have kicked us out.
Oh, no. Some of this might come down to the age. Look at the age. I told you I was in a land of cheddars yesterday that had 3 all the way to 15-year-old cheddars on the shelf, which is mind-blowing. I only went for the 7-year-old cheddar, and you could, cheddar to me, the better the cheddar, if I can snap it and particles go flying, yeah, that's dry cheddar. That's aged cheddar. And that's kind of where I'm at with my English and with even my Lancaster County 7-year-old. But think about the preparation method, unripened, mold ripened, bacteria ripened. And we're going to talk a little bit about these things briefly, because if it's unripened, it has really nothing to do with any bacteria. Think about those super white neutral cheeses. Mold ripened, we just said, some of those that actually have the blue stream going through them are your mold ripened. Bacteria ripened would be those that actually have something wiped on the outside of the cheese itself to kind of ferment. And those are the ones that I said I often have to get rid of that rind because they can be pretty, well, to me, offensive. The type of milk used is a cow, goat, sheep, buffalo. I looked for buffalo mozzarella there yesterday. They did not have. That's a rarity if you can find it. But as I told you, I went right out of there and didn't buy anything goat or sheep. Everything I have is cow on my plate today. The color of the cheese, does it mean anything? White, light yellow or orange, country of origin, not every cheese comes from America. I know it's cheaper if you buy it here. Trust me, the cheeses I have on my plate here are from, these are original cheeses and they cost a little more, but I can taste the distinction. I can taste the difference in those 2 cheddars I have. Here's just a real basic chart, and I don't want to get into this, but if you look at the very, top left and top right, unripened cheeses, pretty much, you can break it down with acid and heat, acid and rennet. I mentioned the rennet or rennet only. Ripened cheeses on the right can be broken down with bacteria or mold. Bacteria usually on the outside. Well, it can go either way on both of these. On my plate, I know my bacteria ripened cheese is on the outside. So, and again, what this does is kind of breaks down in a broad sense all those different cheeses in the subheading. So you can dig into this stuff deeper, guys, because at the end of this, I also have credits to websites that there are cheese head websites out there, literally, that have a ton of great information on cheese making, and all the different, the one site I was on, I think, had over 500 cheeses and all listed alphabetically, which was a great resource. So,
Also got a lot of good reference books, Joe.
yes. So again, at the end of this, please don't just, I mean, if you're really into this, write these down, because they're really worth checking out. But cheese color, we were just talking about that, is if you think about cheese color, mozzarella, that pure white color, they're goat cheese. Usually your goat cheese is that white. If cheese is very snow white, it probably is a goat cheese, probably. Goats and sheep, to a degree, break down beta carotene into colorless vitamin A. So these have higher levels of vitamin A than cow's milk. Goat cheese, love it. It's a perfect match. I had to get this in there because some of the slides that I designed didn't have any mention of Sauvignon Blanc, but I have to mention that. It is summertime. If you've never had goat cheese and Sauvignon Blanc, to me, it is one of the best and most distinct wines to pair, and cheeses to pair with each other. Don't be afraid to try dry rosé, because it's that tanginess in there that's really going to match with that cheese. Now others, say to spread it on crackers with honey to balance it. And if you've never noticed the different brands of goat cheese, if some might be goat heads out there, that even in the Giant, you'll find these different brands. But there's so many different flavors of honey, cranberry, and blueberry. It's a little too much for me. I do like garlic and herb, or just plain. And if you ever get a chance, if you're a goat head, look at the brand that I have posted on the right there, Cypress Grove. I believe they're out of California. Try their Purple Haze.
Seriously?
Seriously. They're not cheap. They're made in small batches. And I think Giant carries all the Cypress Grove cheeses. They're all goat or sheep. So thinking of color, moving into yellow, it is the yellow. What does it mean when you see a yellow cheese? I often think it's something unnatural, like, if you get, I don't know, having a plain American cheese, one's white and one's yellow. What's the difference? Nothing, absolutely nothing, because that's a whole other story. But if you get into cheese color and where they make these cheeses, if they're using the true colors, yeah. Anyway, we're going to talk about this little thing called annatto. Yellow cow's milk cheese made without annatto being used. Annatto, again, when we get into the orange cheeses, is used. If you see a yellow cheese out there, in the quality sense, if it's a deep yellow, that's a good thing, because that yellow is derived from the cow's diet. Carotenoids, the beta carotene. The more of that the more they have of that in their diet, the more yellow the cheese will be. If you look at the cheese kind of color chart there, U.S. non-pasture fed to pasture fed, you see a color difference, and I want to say in a natural way. The more grass and clover they eat, the more beta carotene will be in the grass. So the more yellow the cheese will be. With that, and this is where it becomes a distinction, will you be able to detect a more grassy, earthy, or vegetative flavor than in the cheese? So, and I want to think so, yes. How about if your cheese is orange? That could be scary, right? Again, maybe if it's Kraft. Okay, no beating up on Kraft. Okay, no beating up on Kraft, but pretty sure Kraft doesn't use this annatto. Quality cheeses, I have two of them on my plate here. Both of them claim in the ingredients, the very last ingredient, that they colored this cheese with annatto. Annatto is pretty much seed from a South American achiote tree. I'm not saying that. Achiote. There we go. Achiote tree. There we go. But they take these seeds, pretty much grind them up, and make an extract. That is what they use to color most of your cheddars and Colbys. If it's real stuff, I can't guarantee that the cheddars and Colbys you're buying at the Giant. I'm not sure, where that color. I'm pretty sure you will not see a natto in that color. I think they use the artificial food colorings.
Laura said earlier that the Colby cheese was, I think she said, was invented in Wisconsin.
Yes, there again. A lot of those cheeses are what we call, what are referred to as the American originals. They really don't have any other real, they were created there, like she said, and usually named after maybe a local town in the same regard. So
She was also asked earlier, what would you pair with Swiss? And I understand there's sharp Swiss, there's baby Swiss, there's all kinds of Swiss.
Hang in there. That's
Okay.
we're going to roll on this. Unripened cheeses refers to cheeses that are not aged, pretty much made by coagulating the milk with acid and or that rennet. This is just simple cheese making. Back to if you think about the curd, this is, they take the curds one step further in these unripened cheeses. They're pretty light and neutral. They don't get any flavor from any microbial action. You know what I mean? So it's just tasting like dairy. Think about fresh mozzarella. If you've ever had fresh mozzarella balls, to me it tastes like solidified milk. They're very milky in that flavor. And of course, this is what we're talking about here. We're talking about the white cheeses. But then when we get into ripened cheeses, this is where they take these and actually age them, made by coagulating enzymes. The rennet, the enzyme originally extracted from the stomach, is pretty much what's going to be used here in these cheeses, because when they're using rennet, how do I say it? Anyone who's ever had sharp provolone, some of them Italian cheeses that can be, I call offensive. There's a certain flavor there with certain aged provolone or those types, and they come from rennet. It's that enzyme. Character comes directly from microbes being used. It's the source. It's a specific source of the flavor in that cheese. Now, here's some pictures of your blues. The blue cheese, of course, is pretty much an internal. Cheese types, soft, fresh. Here's where we're going to start now into the basic types and kind of cover some of these. When we're talking about, even that white cheese, your soft, fresh cheeses cover cream cheese. Cream cheese is creamy texture, flavor. Spread it on a bagel. I don't know if anyone's familiar with mascarpone. Is similar to the cream cheese, but it's triple cream. Nothing hard healthy here, but it's mostly associated, I think, with desserts. I don't know if anyone's out there sitting there with a bowl of mascarpone and sipping on a Gewürztraminer. Probably not going to be happening right now. But what they do suggest with these two cheeses, though, there might be wines that would work, and they're suggesting semi-sweet in this semi-sweet sparkling. What I believe they're recommending here is, when you say sparkling muscat, if you're familiar with the types of like Moscato d'Asti, not necessarily Asti Spumante, but something a semi-sparkling muscat. Also demi-sec champagne, nothing too dry. You got to have that sweetness. Off-dry Riesling, Gewürztraminer. Now you see that this is American cheese, people, so they're going to talk about U.S. wines, from Pacific Northwest and New York. But there are plenty of wines you can consider from around the world, again, depending on where the cheese comes from, that will probably match up in the same vein. You notice what we have: Vidal Blanc, Cayuga, some of those varieties, Marty, Niagara, they're on the sweeter side, and that's what they're kind of saying, but in the vein of desserts, probably. Late harvest, Gewürztraminer, Muscat, Vignoles, or Cacciatelli. Sounds like New York to me.
Yeah, it does.
All right. Then you have soft ripened. That was unripened. So now you have some soft ripened cheeses. These are the cheeses that include the bries. Brie has that, it's made from cow's milk, but has that white mold, that bloomy rind, the fluffy feel to the outside. It's actually named after the French region. There's another one, Camembert, moist, soft, creamy, surface ripened cow's milk cheese. But in any of these, you can select age, and the older they are, the less creamy and the drier they are. Pair younger brie with mild, sweeter wine, pair mature brie with fuller, drier wine. Now that's all subjectable. I don't know that I would, I'm doing dry wine with brie and probably sticking to a champagne. We like champagne. Wine recommended semi-sweet sparkling, possibly sparkling muscat, demi-sec champagne. This is all subjectable. If you go with something dry, they say you can do it with a dry champagne as well, but this is all depending on your taste. I don't know that I would go sweet on brie or camembert. Certainly an extra dry in champagne might not be a bad idea. But if you're, again, back to personal taste, if you like those wines bone dry, natural is good. Maybe a light to medium bodied red, Gamay. Gamay is the grape of Beaujolais. Keep it light and fruity, a little chill. Grenache, keep it in mind, is really fruity stuff depending on where it comes from, but can be high in alcohol. And how that alcohol matches with these cheeses might be critical. Pinot Noir, I think, is a beautiful match, kind of like champagne, because anytime I can match that little bit of earthiness, I love Pinot Noir. My Pinot is dead, unfortunately, but I love Pinot Noir because of that earthiness that it offers. That would be the last
5 or
one.
6.
Six.
Yeah. Smells like nail polish remover.
It's bad. It's dead. But Pinot Noir in this same vein is a perfect match because of that earthiness and the fruit. And if it's not dead, you know what I mean. Here's what I was mentioning, Camembert. It's a place, So when we think about cheeses in the same way of wines, don't think of like me going to Lancaster County and buying my cheddar. I want you to think of, where true cheddar may come from, because you may find replicas, duplicates. We go to a market called Roots. No, it's called Roots. Roots Market, and there's a cheese maker right there, and he makes all these local, and it might be, he makes a bunch of local cheeses there. So back to when they talk about Camembert and or Brie, usually they're making those same things, but in that style. Brie, it's actually a region. There it is in France, So when you see that little white circle out there, remember, true Brie is coming from a region. And with this, there's like wines, there's going to be PDO, EU laws that govern what kind of animal it's coming from, aging processes, blah, blah, blah. So it's not the same as making things in the US. Cheese type, semi-soft, moving on here, made with whole milk, creamy flavors and textures. And we're going to talk about this. And when we talk about these semi-soft cheeses, many of these are what we call those American originals. There's two categories: dry and wash rind. Dry rind, no surface ripening. It's the mildest. You ever hear of Munster, Fontina, Monterey Jack? There's another, again, these are all super American, pretty much originals. Havarti is not. True Havarti is made in, is a Danish cheese. And I believe, many come from that area, but you can go to pretty much anywhere and find a domestic Havarti and pretty much flavored with anything, especially dill. Again, being a Danish thing, dill is a common thing for the Havarti. But talking about the Munster, if you think about Munster, if you've ever had the Munster made in this country, the stuff that has that orange stuff on the outside, but it's bendable, it's pliable, it's like rubber. It's glorified American cheese with food coloring on the outside. Yeah, that's all that is. If you look at it close, the ingredients on Domestic Munster, that orange is usually some sort of a food coloring. You know, it doesn't taste like anything. It's just to make it look like something that it isn't. Fontina, same thing. It's kind of making, you know, something, taking, I want to think that Italian feel and again, certain aggressive flavors in a cheese from certain Italian cheeses. And they also make these domestically. Monterey Jack. You know, there's tons of Monterey Jack out there because next to pizza cheese, that's probably America's one of their favorites, you know, and throw some hot peppers in there, man, you got it good, right? Wash rind cheeses, this is where your surface is ripened, you know, and this is where, you know, I was cutting one of my surface ripened cheeses over here a while ago. I told you that they can be, you know, pretty strong, semi-soft, strong, earthy flavors, pungent aromas. Now, in this case, the examples are Limburger and brick cheese, and what they suggest is they actually pair better with beer. Beer and cider are part of the cheese thing as well. We're not really going to get in so much of that, but our wines that we would be talking about here, semi-soft, you know, we're talking Munster, Fontina, Monterey Jack, Havarti. These are American, again, depending on the cheese, can be very friendly. Okay, that's the easiest way I can say that. So your wines probably should be on the lighter side. I wouldn't go, you know, too heavy. You know, Gewürz Riesling. Now it's funny because they have Müller-Thurgau here as one of the examples, or Silvaner. And anyone who knows German wine, we'll be talking German wine soon, by the way, guys. Your most planted varieties in Germany are, you know, it's a toss-up between Müller-Thurgau and Silvaner. So if you're out there buying a bottle of Blue Nun anytime today, or Black Tower, or any of those old brands, it might be those varieties, not Riesling. But keep that in mind because they're kind of neutral. And what I said here is what we're trying to match up with these cheeses are wines that are kind of neutral. Pinot Blanc, if anyone's familiar with Pinot Blanc, I think fits into this vein very well as well. Arcazzelli, but keep it on the dry side. And I think Dr. Frank's is on the drier side, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. Sauvignon Blanc. And what did I tell you? My white here I have here today, a Semillon Sauvignon Blanc blend. Actually, there's some Muscadel in my white as well. But medium bodied, you can get into Pinot Gris or Grigio. That's very subjective because I find those two wines to be different. Gris from France, Grigio from Italy. Two different animals, two different wines. You have to think about that too when you're matching. I mentioned Pinot Blanc, Sauvignon Blanc, and, you know, keep Sauvignon Blanc in mind, depending on where it comes from. California is not going to be so acidic and be rounder and might fit these cheeses a little better. Again, when it comes to Sauvignon Blanc and goat cheese, I'm thinking New Zealand and that real zingy, you know, high off the charts acid. And also, there's that other grape in there, Viognier. My wife loves Viognier. It's one of her favorite white ones. No, she doesn't like Viognier at all. Okay. Light-bodied reds, Beaujolais, but not just Beaujolais. And not that you're going to go out and find any Nouveau anytime soon. But what we're saying here is, you know, Gamay light. That's what I would say with Nouveau Beaujolais. What's that other one there, Marty? Maréchal Foch?
That is a French American hybrid grape. Yes.
Hybrid, yeah. You could tell someone, I think the New York folks helped write this. It had to be there's a lot of domestic grapes in this. I mean, there's, you know, back to what I said earlier, how many different varieties of grapes are there? How many different wines, and certainly how many different cheeses? Now, like, look at this description. They have Beaujolais Nouveau and Napa Gamay. Now, I don't know, I'm an old timer. I know what Napa Gamay actually is. It's actually translates to a grape called Valdeguay. But years ago, they could call it Gamay Beaujolais in California until the law cracked down. Right. But think of that light grape. And then, of course, Pinot Noir, if mine would be drinkable.
Maréchal Foch, by the way, is will make a dandy Beaujolais Nouveau.
Okay.
As will another French American hybrid, Leon Malot. And I want to mention, as far as semi-soft cheeses, there's a cheese called Belpaese, and it's a northern Italian cheese, and I only know it know of it because of my maternal grandmother, but that was her favorite cheese. And I looked high and low for it over the years. I finally found it at Wegmans, and it's just a delightful semi-soft cheese. Goes great with fruit and lighter white wines.
Wouldn't it be novel to be able to go into a cheese store and actually be able to buy wine at the same time?
Well, I remember years ago that Carnes store out on Cherry Drive. This is before the PLC.
Yeah.
Before the PLCB had a store there. York Springs Winery had an outlet inside of Carnes. It was actually at that time, it was actually another company that owned.
But were there cheeses there?
And
And I'm talking at the Wegmans level, like an international cheese section that I could actually match up and have an expert there to match those things up.
And I'm trying to get, so like they had a huge cheese area in that grocery store out on Cherry Drive at the time, and the guy was dying to get a wine store in there, and York Springs Winery put a wine store in there so they could match up wines with his enormous cheese selection that he had at the time.
I think it's a great idea. It would be helpful, because again, depending on the store, depending on your area, I'll stress that, depending on your area, will determine, what stores you have and then certainly what cheese selection they're going to have.
It was Fox's Market, Marty.
What's that?
Fox's Market.
That's what it was. It was Fox's Market.
Fox's. Okay. That was a cheesehead.
That was a cheesehead there, Jerry. Yeah, they were eventually purchased by Carnes, I believe.
Yes. Yeah, Fox is the old market. Yeah, getting into back to the cheeses here, your blue cheeses, there are many different types, but when we're talking about blues, keep it simple here. It includes blue and gorgonzola. As I said, there's dozens of different blues out there, and each will have its own unique flavor and texture. This is where I have, because I'm not a huge blue fan, I tend to go with the real creamier blues. I'm not such a dry, crumbly guy. It depends. Yeah, most react similarly with wines. Blue cheeses range in texture from firm and crumbly to creamy. Flavors vary, but are typically sharp, piquant, and full flavored. And that's a good way to put it, because depending, if you're not familiar with blue cheese, if you're a novice in wines and or blue cheeses, start easy. There are easier, and maybe just staying to a simple blue cheese may be the way to go, because they can be pretty offensive. Tangy, Sue says. Well, I mean, back to how you look at the mold thing, it may take getting some used to, and matching up with the right wine is always critical. Full-bodied whites, possibly Chardonnay, full-bodied reds. Now they have Cab here, Cab blends, Syrah or Shiraz. Back to my thing, when it has that, are we talking French Syrah? Or are we talking Aussie Shiraz? Two different animals there. So, depending on what you're going for, they might both work, but just two different things to mention in one there. Italian grapes always work to me in this vein as well. Barbera, Nebbiolo, those are classic grapes. Now, when it comes to these, what I found to be the easiest is your Sauvignon Blanc, Semillon, late harvest blends, or more specific, Sauterne. So yeah, that's the best way I can see. If you're going to find anything out there in that vein, it's probably going to be just Sauterne. Go ahead.
Couple of comments here, Joe.
Yeah, fortified, and then of course outside of that, your fortifieds, from Ruby Port. Ruby Ports are generally on the lighter, more fruity, simple side. They're the cheap ones at $10. Now it has vintage port or even late bottled vintage port. Those are going to have a lot more substance, more tannin, more beef. And again, depending on what kind of cheese, what kind of blue you're matching up here. Ruby port, I'd keep it simple blue. When you're stepping up the flavor into a vintage port or an LBV, I would certainly move up from a blue cheese.
Jerry has commented that he urges you to try a Stilton. He says it's really creamy. And today he's drinking a Toscana Chairman's Selection 12.99. It's probably the Il Burchino. And it goes great with Stilton, he says. It's
Okay.
85% Sangiovese,
Right.
10% Cab Sav, 5% Royal. And he has that here. And also Robin Downs suggests if you're looking for cheese, go to De Bruno Brothers, which I know.
Oh, yeah.
That has also commented on that before.
Oh, yeah.
She's mentioned that in the announcement we put out that De Bruno Brothers is one of the sources in town where you can get good cheese.
Well, even locally here, I don't know if you've noticed, some of our local grocery stores have set up little De Bruno kiosks in their cheese sections. I think the Giant, right there in Linglestown. I know years ago they did. They had a pretty much a De Bruno section there. So.
Giant also has a little kiosk for Caputo Brothers Creamery, which is fantastic. It's in Adams County. If you ever make anything with ricotta or mozzarella cheeses, I mean, theirs are the absolute best.
Okay.
And that's coming from a guy that knows how to cook.
Yeah, I cook a lot. But we have some interesting Spanish cheeses here tonight. We have a Matica, which is a fresh sheep cheese. It's like a Montrachet, only it's from sheep's milk.
Right.
And it's very, very good with the white burgundy.
I bet.
We have a Tres Leches, which is sheep, goat, and cow milk from Spain. The Matica's from Spain too. And that's a nice, mild, flavorful cheese. Not hard like a Manchego, not as sharp as a Manchego, but full flavored and really creamy and nice. And we also have, of course, Manchego. We're drinking a wine which none of us have ever had before. It is fantastic. It's a dessert wine, a Vendoux. It's from France. It's called, the varietal is Figuera Blanc. And I have never heard of that before, but it's from France. It's a dessert wine, but it is not syrupy. It's lighter, fruitier, and more acidic. I'm trying to think of something to compare it to. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe a Riesling that isn't too sweet, that isn't real sweet. But this doesn't have quite the weight of a Riesling, but it's a light, refreshing, crisp white, which is also sweet. Yeah, and it pairs very well with these cheeses. I had never heard of it before.
Is it anything like that French terrassou?
I don't know. I don't recall tasting that.
We decided to get a jump on our homework for Wine Wednesday this week. Because
Outstanding.
we often prefer a cheese course rather than sweet desserts. So it seemed like an opportunity. Thank you, Joe, for the opportunity.
Any excuse is a good excuse.
That's right.
There you go. All right, ready to roll on?
Yep.
All right. So, there's a shot. Can't get enough high definition blue.
Oh, there you go.
When we talk about blues, we just mentioned Gorgonzola, as one of those types. You can buy just plain blue cheese, but again, Gorgonzola is a specific, and you can get two different types here, crumbly and creamy. And there's a preference here for the Joe. Crumbly or aged Gorgonzola, similar to traditional blue. Wines they recommend, again, are full-bodied white, Chard. You've heard this before. Cab blends, possibly. Syrah, Shiraz, Barbera, Nebbiolo. Looks similar, right? Late harvest. You've seen this with Sauterne, Ruby Port, Vintage Port, LBV. Just keep in mind, back to that sweetness of the port. or any of these really that have that sweetness or that depth of sweetness is what you really want to counter in that saltiness and the flavors of the blue cheese. So remember, each of these blue cheeses, some can be a little softer and some can be more aggressive. So when you're sitting there and really thinking about what you're tasting, this is where I prefer myself to have Sauterne, but that's just a preference for me. Ports, because of the high alcohol, is just a different animal. So just different wine. Creamy Gorgonzola. Yeah, this is more my thing. It's more traditional Italian style. Italian style. With flavor more earthy than sharp. And that's where I get into maybe liking it a little better. Because it's, again, those sharp, piquant flavors, those really aggressive flavors are the ones that, and I'm being kind, I could use a lot other terminology when it comes to blue cheese. Wines here, medium bodied reds, think about it, Pinot, again, Syrah. And when we say Syrah, that can be anything from, it doesn't have to be hit you over the head with Syrah, okay? There are lighter bodied Syrahs out there, believe it or not. And what I mean by that are your own style blends in the realm of things. Again, late harvest, Sauterne style, fortified. Have you ever heard of white ports? My one time being to Portugal, I was introduced to white port and just how much white port is really missed in this country. Now, there for a while, we did have some white port available on our store shelves, but we kind of missed the point with white port. White ports are traditionally served during the summertime and with a little chill and maybe a slight bit of, maybe a little bit of a lemon or something in there, believe it or not. And it's just a different animal than your, different wine than your red ports, your ruby ports. If you've never had a white port, try those in contrast in the summertime. So moving on here, let's get into some of the other the other names. Moving out of blues, we'll be here all night. Gouda and Edam. Are you familiar with these cheeses? Probably. These are the cheeses out there. You've probably seen them with the white or the red waxy rind. If you ever see a red rind, it's their standard age. You ever find Gouda or Edam in a black rind, those are aged and are my personal favorite. If I'm buying Gouda, I would prefer to buy it in the black rind or an aged Gouda. Aged Gouda to me is more along the line of, or becomes more along the line of a Parmesan, more grainy, more concentrated. It's more meaty, if you will, as opposed to creamy. Both will pair with a range of wines, but keep in mind what your type you're getting for what you're pairing. I call the simple red Gouda and Edam red wax on. Again, they can be kind of American cheesy, kind of dairy, but very simple. But if you get a chance to find the black, again, keep in mind those are aged and have a lot more flavor. There are exceptions out here in these cheeses. They have smoked and seasoned types, with caraway and cumin. But keep in mind they might work a little bit better, even though they're in your cheese section. They might be better with beer. All right. So I like beer too, guys. See, I'm a flexible Joe. I drink wine, we drink beer, we drink a little bit of everything. It depends on, what's going on, but, beers and ciders are certainly in that mix. Sizers. What's a sizer?
It's a cider kind of mead.
That's a cider mead.
Cider
Okay.
mead.
Mild Gouda, typically made with whole milk and has a creamy texture. This is your red rind or wax Gouda, your standard. Everyone, pretty much every store carries the mild Gouda. And the the difference, the Edam, is kind of similar. I've always said Gouda, they're very similar in their flavor, but actually one's made with whole milk and the other made with part skim milk. It depends on which brand or whatever, because I've had both and different brands, but they seem to be about the same texture or consistency, and with that real buttery, dairy, maybe a slight nutty flavor. The older they get, certainly the more nutty they're going to get, and more granular. They recommend semi-sweet sparkling, back to, sparkling Muscat. If you know Moscato d'Asti, might be the way to go. Might be a little too sweet here for me, but back to different tastes out there, guys. But light, medium-bodied wines, keep in mind, just because it says Riesling, Müller-Thurgau, Gewürztraminer, Savon, or Arcatzelli and Niagara, you have different sweetnesses in every one of those. So just because we're saying those varieties, you got in the realm of Riesling, you can have dry Riesling, sweet Riesling. So just keep in mind what we're talking about here in the cheese and your taste. If you like sweet wines, then go down that sweet road. But keep in mind, like the realm of Riesling, you could do 3 flavors easily, in a dry, a medium, and a sweet. And, just all 3 be different wines, okay? Aged Gouda in Adam, and same thing as what I was saying. These come from, or what is known as sweet curd cheeses. They don't become any sharper with age, if that makes any sense. They will dry out. They'll get concentrated, but they're not getting that same aggressive, again, I say that word, piquant, flavor. So more buttery, nutty as they intensify. I love aged Gouda. It is probably one of the best, I love Manchego from Spain, and I love the aged Goudas because they tend to be, I could put them out and they're crowd favorites. Across the board, they tend to work with a lot of different wines and a lot of different palates. And flavors of caramel or butterscotch. The older your Gouda is, the deeper yellow, and literally that caramel and butterscotch is going to be present in there. I think they're delicious, but they're, again, more meaty cheeses. Wines, stepping it up, more medium, full-bodied white, Sauvignon Fumé, and back to where it comes from when we say that. I say California, something a bit riper, not so tangy. I wouldn't say even Fumé Blanc, because I'm thinking more French in that style. Something a little riper. Riesling, Gewürztraminer, think of the sweetness there, guys. Pinot Blanc can be a neutral wine. Mostly I see them coming from Alsace. I'm not so sure how many domestic Pinot Blancs we really have, but they would be riper and probably a better match for these cheeses. Medium to full-bodied reds. Again, back to the Pinot Noir. Pinot is going to play a key here from the lighter cheeses pretty much to the heavier cheeses, because Pinot kind of plays into, you can have the fruit and you can have the earthiness. Pinot is a great, just a pairing. I love the grape. Shiraz and Syrah. Can't say it enough, depending on where it comes from, guys. Here again, you might want to step this one up with flavor, and this might be more appropriate to go with something Australian, or again, something a little more serious in the way of a French Syrah. Merlot or Merlot Cab blends, if you will. But here again, these are your typical, I call them the big gun, your typical red grapes. Late harvest, Riesling, Gewürz, Sauvignon Blanc, Semillon, your Sauterne blends. So that's subjectable. I don't know that I'd go late harvest or sweet wines with these because this cheese is pretty meaty. This almost, I think, requires something in that medium full-bodied red category. Personal favorite. Pasta filata. Now this is just, refers to the term spun paste. Now you've heard of these cheeses. It really refers to the cheese making procedure. Fresh cheese curds are dipped in hot water and stretched or pulled like taffy. What do you think we're talking about, guys? This is mozzarella. That's right, string cheese, all that. It's mozzarella, made in a wide range of styles. This is fresh, high moisture. Well, they make it high moisture and low moisture. Hard skim milk, whole milk. So mozzarella, it's America's #1 cheese, thanks to pizza. But, as I seen mozzarella in the store yesterday, little mozzarella balls. It's rare if you can find buffalo mozzarella, and literally made from buffalo. The Hilton used to have it in Harrisburg. We used to get buffalo mozzarella salads at the Hilton, one of the rare places. Provolone, always made from whole milk, but provolone is going to step the flavor up a little bit more on mozzarella. And these are available in mild or aged. And provolone can be aggressive, in that aged style. Wide range of shapes and styles, smoked or plain. Now, when they smoke a provolone, the smokiness is pretty much going to dominate. Because again, provolone has its own thing. Fresh mozzarella, just mentioned this. It's typically packed in water. If you find the real mozzarella, I'm not talking about in a bag. You know, and I want to back this up because when we were talking about Parmesan cheese earlier, you know, true Parmesan Reggiano, it really has to come from Italy. And there's a lot of domestic Parmesans out there. Well, here, I'm getting ahead of myself. And again, mozzarella, I guess staying to the Italian thing here, I want to get to that. Mozzarella is this neutral. It's pretty much a fresh, clean, milky flavor. You know, keep it for salads, you know. But what do you match when you're talking about wine here? Pinot Gris or Grigio? Pinot Grigio. Not so much Pinot Gris. Grigio to me is a little more acidic, lighter. Depending on the Pinot Grigio from Italy, they can be pretty light and watery anyway. Semillon, light-bodied reds, Napa Gamay or Valdez and Beaujolais. So keep it again on that lighter side. Mozzarella, it's white cheese, has very little flavor. If you're not putting it in the oven and baking it, you're really not intensifying the flavor in any way. So just be cautious what you're matching up with. So, but boy, it can be good. So, you know, I love these salads this time. You know, caprese, all that stuff happening this time of year is you need the fresh tomatoes and mozzarella and some basil. Mild provolone, keeping things moving here. Provolone made similar to mozzarella, but I say it has a little bit more to it. Made from whole milk. They use different cultures then. And I say different cultures because provolone to me has a distinct flavor to it. Personally, I'm not a fan of provolone. Depending on the provolone and who's producing it, a lot of it's domestically produced, can remind me of that stinky feet thing. Much fuller flavor. Wines, medium to full-bodied white, Sauvignon Fumé Blanc, Chenin Blanc. Man, I had a Chenin in the basement, but how many wines can I have here, right? Pinot Gris or Grigio, keep in mind where it's grown. Medium-bodied reds, Pinot Noir always fits the bill here. Grenache, Shiraz blends. Generally, you're going to probably go to Australia for something like that. Look around, you might find some French or even Spanish Grenache Syrah blends. And then, of course, now Malbec's entering the picture here. Not sure why, because Malbec too can be on the lighter side and can be on the super, super heavy side. So just be cautious. Aged sharp provolone. This is the one here it can stand up to a lot of any of your sharp cheeses. You can probably smell it a mile away. These have definite age. And again, those real sharp flavors and the texture here of sharp provolone becomes more granular. It's hard. It's a little harder than the regular. Cheesier. It's more serious, more beefy. Requiring more full-bodied reds. Barbera, Sangiovese, Nebbiolo. See where we're going here with our reds now, guys. Zinfandel, Merlot, aged Cabernet Sauvignon. Now, why do we say aged? Keep in mind because Cab can be high in tannin. What they're suggesting here is something I'm going to assume is something that has softer tannin. And throw this oddball into the mix because Petite Syrah really needs to be long here in some of these. You know, from California, it is one of those that can work on the wild side. Cheese types here, cheddar and Colby. Cheddar, most popular cheese in the United States and the world. If we've not mentioned cheddar already, you know, everything is better with cheddar. Different styles and ages make each cheddar different. You know, as I said, I have one here from England, this Leicester, red, and I hope I Leicester. It is from England. made from cow. And it is like some of the, it is so flavorful. Where I bought the other cheddar from Lancaster, which is a 7-year-old, and to me, just distinctly different cheeses here. Colby, we mentioned these two types of cheeses because here's where that orange color is going to come from. And I do suggest, if you want to know if the cheese is real or not, look to see if that ingredient, annatto, see if it's on your or in your cheese. Other than that, it's like a vegetable food coloring. It's just generic. Colby, an American original, named after the town of origin in Wisconsin. Did someone mention that?
Laura did.
There we go. And similar to a mild cheddar, and that's stretching it. I've had Colby's before, but Colby to me is like strong American as opposed to mild cheddar, but that's splitting hairs. They're mild. Your wines, keep them light, medium bodied. In the whites, you can do anything. Diverts. They threw a white Grenache in here, which I thought was interesting because it wouldn't be my choice. White Grenache is, a Southern French Rhone variety, generally high in alcohol, not real flavorful. I guess it would work here, but probably would work with anything, but so would a glass of water. Pinot Gris or Grigio, here again, depending on who is consuming, is going to be a popular choice. Sauvignon and Fumé, Arcatzelli, Vidal Blanc, depending on if you want that sweetness, possibly. Light to medium bodied reds, we're repeating a lot of this from Pinot Noir and Syrah and Shiraz. Here again, we're stepping it up with Merlot and Zinfandel. And what's that last one there, Marty?
Marcel Foch.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we have a winery just opened up here in Mannheim that actually just planted their own. So I guess we'll have to wait a couple years to find out what will turn out. But moving it up, keeping with cheddar, medium cheddar, traditionally aged over 90 days, creamier texture than the mild cheddar, and more of a brothy flavor. We're going to pick up in flavor here. Light, medium bodied whites, Chenin, Semillon Sauvignon, Seyval, Vidal, Niagara, if you like the sweetness. Medium bodied reds, Pinot Noir, Shiraz, Syrah, Merlot, Malbec, Zinfandel. That's a range right there, so depending on the Pinot Noir, I think we're talking something heavier, not so cool climate. Think of California, maybe, when we're talking in this vein for medium cheddar. Aged cheddar, this is what I'm having today, what we're having, can be aged months or years. And again, one of them I think that I have is 7 years. I don't know what the English is aged. Develops full, sharp, almost beefy flavor as it ages. Again, it's very substantial in flavor. To me, that 2 to 5 years is a good choice. It doesn't become too expensive, and they're still dry enough and flavorful enough. You pay a lot. I mean, I seen that 15-year-old cheddar out there yesterday. I think it was like $30 a pound. It's just a little too much. I don't know if I'll ever be able to appreciate 15-year-old cheddar. But think of your wines, more full-bodied whites, definitely Chardonnay. Chardonnay has to be in the game here. And I don't know, when we're talking about Chardonnay, think of it, is it wooded or unoaked? So medium full-bodied reds, Shiraz, Syrah, Zinfandel, Merlot, Cab, late harvest, possibly. That's a stretch. These coming from the cheese folks, they recommend something sweet, possibly. And then, of course, fortified, they threw Madeira and or Tawny Port. Now, that's different than Ruby Port. Madeira and Tawny Port tend to become more caramely in their flavor, not so much fruit, if you will. So there's a different flavor when it comes to Madeira and or Tawny Ports. There we go. Someone asked about Swiss cheese earlier. This is the cheese with holes in it, baby. And aged Swiss contain holes or eyes. Certain cultures produce the carbon dioxide in the cheese, expands to form the holes in the cheese. And one of the, here, Gruyere and Racelet are 2 Swiss style cheeses. Then we have the Racelet here today as one of our cheeses. It's really stinky stuff. But let me just say this, guys, if you like macaroni and cheese, use these cheeses. I mean, if you've ever done any kind of that kind of thing, these cheeses will kick it in its butt. So they aren't cheap though. And these are your washed rind. It can be washed rind or surface ripened. And as I said, my racelet is definitely surface ripened. Had to wash my hands 3 times.
Huh.
They have very few eyes and develop intense, buttery, earthy flavors with age. And again, this is intense. This isn't like that, you know, I call it American Swiss. Well, baby Swiss is just that. There is no other thing. When you see baby Swiss, that's Swiss cheese made in America. And it's pretty tame. Yeah, baby Swiss, an American original, made with whole milk. And you'll see the smaller holes. Mild, buttery, nutty flavor, creamy texture, very neutral here. I'd keep it on the lighter side. You know, again, Riesling. You can do Gewürztraminer. Did I forget an ER in there? Gewürztraminer. I would do Chenin Blanc possibly, or even Sable Blanc. I wouldn't go too much. And here again, keep it on the lighter side if you're doing reds, Gamay, you know, new Beaujolais types, lighter Pinot. They have Grenache on here. Again, Grenache is a fruitly grape, but watch where it's grown, because if it's in a hot climate, it can be too alcoholic. Aged Swiss. And again, we're going to start picking up the flavors, though. Made from part skim milk, very firm. Typically made in large wheels. Well, that's how they age it. Has the large eyes. This is your true Swiss, if you will. Aged for that nutty and I say piquant flavor, because it's just taking that Swiss cheese and tripling it, that flavor of Swiss cheese.
Is it
Not for everyone, but go ahead.
is aged Swiss? Is that the same as sharp?
Yeah. Yes.
All right.
Yeah. Wine here, medium full-bodied whites, same thing is going to roll. Riesling, Sauvignon Blanc, Vidal Blanc, Sable Blanc, and that Viognier, no Viognier. Yeah, keep in mind, Viognier, not everyone knows it. I know it's not one of the, like, you know, typical grapes out there, but don't be afraid. We're talking about trying some new things. Don't be afraid to try a Viognier out there, guys, you know, for something new in the way of whites. Look for them, because there's some bad Viognier, but there's a lot of really nice Viogniers out there too. Got to be cautious. Medium full-bodied reds, again, Pinot Noir, Shiraz, but I'm just repeating myself here. But in the way of Merlot, Malbec, Zin, those are heavier grapes. They don't have to be knocking you over the head with 16% alcohol. Keep that in mind. Wines with balance. There are certain types of Swiss cheese, real Swiss cheese, Gruyere. Again, surface ripened, buttery, nutty, earthy. It's traditional dishes like French onion soup, quiche Lorraine, fondue, great table cheese, but it is expensive. A lot of people go for just simple Swiss cheese for those large functions. Come to Joe's house, you get real cheese. Light to medium bodied whites, Riesling, Gewürztraminer, Sauvignon Fumé, Pinot Gris and Grigio. You know, you get the gist here. Kind of repeating the same grapes, but you see we're stepping up. Pinot Noir in reds is a constant, but always keep in mind on the lighter side, where the Pinot comes from, it makes a difference. Here we're moving into something more substantial, but these earthy flavors, just be cautious. I wouldn't want something too light, and why I think Malbec, Grenache, and all those kind of suit here as well. Your hard cheeses, we're in the home stretch. Grana, if you've heard me mention Grana, Grana is, it refers to that granular texture. Parmesan, you know, it is in that same vein. In the Parmesan family, there's a cheese called Grana Padano. It's like half the price of Parmesan, but it's from a larger area. You know, Parmesan Reggiano is from like the bullseye, whereas this is just from a larger area. But if you see Grana Padano out there, and you may in the same, it's worth trying. Parmesan, known as the king of cheeses, one of the oldest, as well as Asiago, Dry Jack, Romano. Another one here, throw this in here, Papato, raw sheep's milk cheese styled on Italian pecorino, studded with whole peppercorns. Now, Pecorino is one of those, like Romano, can be it can be offensive. I say offensive, very sharp, more enzymatic. It's those enzymes that I'm really turned off by. And Pecorino really has that flavor in there. And maybe pair with a beer or a cider. There's your, and Parmesan. If it's true Parmesan Reggiano, if you ever notice, it'll actually have it on the end of the rind. The picture actually shows you Parmesan Reggiano, and it authenticates, because you'll find a lot of domestic, lookalikes. I threw this in great because Sangiovese. If I think Parmesan Reggiano, I have to think of Sangiovese. Sangiovese, it's like your most grown grape in Tuscany. It's grown all over Italy, but where they're, again, think of where it grows and goes. Where it goes, it grows. You know what I mean? It's going to go together. Hefty red wine. And again, when I think Sangiovese, think of those cheeses like Asiago, Parmesan, Fontina. I threw something in here to kind of preload, something coming up in our future, I don't know if anyone notices. Those are the 7 faces of Banfi Sangioveses. We'll be doing a Banfi presentation in, I think, a couple months. Well, like 6 weeks out. Right. But just so you know, Banfi is one of those companies located in Tuscany that, we're talking just one grape, Sangiovese. There are many different flavors or faces of Sangiovese. So you almost have to be cautious from the light to the very, I don't want to say heavy, but more complex maybe. Moving into aged Parmesan, again, 10 months to 2 years, again, becoming more buttery, nutty, almost sweet. Oh, this is where putting the wine and the cheese together is amazing. They put a tropical fruit flavor. I don't know that I've ever tasted tropical fruit in my Parmesan, but I guess if you stretch things far enough, you can come up with a descriptor. And aged Parmesan, it intensifies with longer. The longer you age it, the more intense it becomes, more granular it becomes. Again, meaty. I call it meaty. Here it says light to medium bodied whites, but certainly step up the flavor on this one here, guys. Here it says late harvest Gewürz Riesling, but I don't know. This is all very subjective. I don't know that I would use these as my first choices. Aged Parmesan, here again, I think I'm going something more red than I am sweet or fortified. But what makes Parmesan Reggiano unique? The secret is to transfer bacteria from the grass into the cow to the milk, and it can impart the flavor into the cheese. Okay. And I just want to stress this because I just mentioned to you the Grana Padano. Parmesan Reggiano dairies exclusively use natural fermented whey as the bacteria starter to boost the microbiological process. Grana Padano allows the use of lactic bacteria isolated in the laboratory from dairies. So one's natural and the one can be, say, created. So where I told you the Grana Padano is cheaper and also comes from a larger region, the restrictions in making it are a little bit looser. Okay, so just kind of follow me on that. But both of those, Parmesan and Grana, similar cheeses, and one's about half the price of the other. Staying with Asiago, aged Asiago. In Italy, typically enjoyed young, as just Asiago, but we're seeing it aged across the board here. Made with a higher milk fat content, sharp, softer texture and sharper flavor than Parmesan. So, keep that in mind that it doesn't have that granular as Parmesan, but it can have a more, again, I call it aggressive flavor, depending on the Asiago. Now, keep in mind, Asiago there's a lot of domestic Asiago out there, and I'm only talking the real stuff. Looks like the white wines are going to follow the same vein here, Riesling, Gewürztraminer, and then they're going to even suggest sweet wines again with these aged cheeses. Fortified, back to Madeira and tawny port, not the same as Ruby. Just a different animal. I'm not so sure I would be using these. I'm more of a dry wine guy, I think, when it comes to these types of cheeses. But let's cover some grapes here real quick, and we'll get out of this. But Cabernet Sauvignon, if any of you guys did choose Cabernet out there, it is recommended, and it's a hard one to match Cab, because I say a hard one, depending on the cab. If it's really young and tannic and acidic, be cautious. But any aged Gouda, aged sharp cheddar, blue, looking for full flavor. Favors cow's milk cheeses with a washed rind. Okay, may tolerate. Yeah. Well, and again, when we get into the blues, be cautious, guys, that it can tolerate the blues, but that's a personal thing of how blue you go. And the flavors in Cabernet, you know, cedar, lead pencil, tobacco. Some of these things can clash with acids typical in most goat cheeses. So I don't know that I would use a goat cheese ever with Cabernet. But sheep's milk cheese is same way, same thing. If you're having a sheep's milk cheese, it may start, but it might be similar. It can clash. So just be cautious. Chardonnay, you know, one of the classic white grapes out there, and every tasting seems to have Chardonnay out there. But Jarlsberg, it's one of those, you know, Swiss-like cheeses. Brie, we talked about that. With the white bloom on the outside. Camembert, similar, softer, creamier cheeses. Munster, without an E. True Munster comes from Germany. And then Gruyere is your, I want to call it true Swiss cheese. But, you know, we talk about Chardonnay, think about whether the wine is oaked or unoaked, please, guys, because, you know, whether it's from California or whether it's from Burgundy. Again, two different wines and how it's made. I believe in 2 weeks, we're going to be doing a Louis Jadot tasting. In that Jadot tasting, we're going to be tasting 3 different Chardonnays from Louis Jadot. And we'll be discussing oaked and unoaked. And the so maybe keep some cheeses on hand. Chardonnay favors cow milk cheeses, wash rinds, apple, pear, citrus. You know, these are your typical fruit flavors, and again, will work easily with goat milk cheeses. Super aged cow or goat milk cheeses dissolve just fine. Perfect match. Talking about Chardonnay, and again, how that will match with those particular foods. So 100% sheep milk cheeses are usually much less successful. But again, that's flipping a coin there. But Merlot, you've heard about this grape. I don't mind Merlot. Some people absolutely despise it, you know, but if you buy good Merlot, there's nothing wrong with Merlot. And back to, you know, the friendlier Cabernet, maybe, you know, not as tannic, a little, maybe more fruit, you know, more present, if you will. Aged cheddar, Parmesan, aged Gouda, provolone, blue. Try with sheep's milk cheese, younger wash rind cow's milk cheese, and many Alpine style. Alpine style, that's your Swiss cheeses, you know, that have that Swiss kind of a flavor. And there's a whole family of those. Merlot doesn't pair with goat milk cheeses. And again, be cautious even with your blues, because it's not always, but this is where I say it's very subjective. Until you try it, who knows? It's very versatile. And again, depending on where your Merlot comes from, can be light, straightforward, too deep, and complex. So back to how you match that Merlot. They're often less tannic than Cabernet, as I said, but you know, it doesn't always necessarily hold true, depending on where it comes from. Region on wines is, to me, everything, guys. So generally, the Merlot is full body, deep color, high in alcohol. So again, you want the cheese to kind of match up to it. Pinot Gris or Pinot Grigio. Yeah, back to Gris, I think French, Grigio, I think Italian. But you know, Ricotta, Fontina, Provolone. Depending if it's aged or unaged, you know, it might determine the wine, right? So same grape, two names. Italy makes one version, California, well, Italy and California label it the same as Pinot Grigio, but distinctly different wines. France and Oregon, they label theirs as Pinot Gris, but again, are distinctly different wines. It's just a white mutation of Pinot Noir. We can talk about that down the road. Most are made in Italy, most Pinot Grigio. If you know this grape, sometimes it can be just glorified flavored water. Something that can be very light, acidic, neutral, citrusy. And that's why maybe matching with something light in the way of these cheeses, if they're not aged, might be perfect.
Go ahead. Go ahead and say it, Joe. It's lemon water with a kick.
What's that?
Go ahead and say what you used to say. Lemon water with a kick.
That's it. Yeah, that's it. Yeah. Glorified lemon water. Glorified lemon water. Yes. Because and some Pinot Grigios will give you that minerality, which I actually do enjoy. I love that. But some can be pretty rindy, bitter, and not the best. And California, keep in mind, is a little warmer and going to be a richer wine. Ricotta, have to mention it. Ricotta salata, it's recooked, salted Italian cheese made from the whey part of the sheep's milk, which is then pressed, salted, and aged for at least 90 days. It's milky white in color, firm texture, salty taste. Ricotta means recooked, and salata means salted. Just given terminology here, because I think I threw it out earlier and just trying to cover something here. Triple cream blue, my fave, right off the top. Had to put it here because we kind of covered the blues, but there's something about triple cream blues. And again, look at that color, guys, that yellow, that deep yellow. And I'm telling you, it's creamy. It's not hard healthy, but back to pairing this with port or sauterne, it's heaven. I say it's mild enough for everyone to love in the realm of blues without it just knocking you over with blue flavor. Just enough funk to satisfy true blue cheese lovers. All right, champagnes or sparkling wines. Cheese is a natural fit here because of the effervescence in sparkling wine. I mean, the sparkle. Bubbles help break down the acids in the butter fat. Degree of acidity and sweetness help special affinities for certain cheeses, especially those rich, buttery triple creams and brie types. So keep that in mind because acid, to me, and again, back to where they're from, because if you look at where a lot of these French cheeses are from, they're going to be around Burgundy and possibly Champagne. Sweeter or less brut wines will balance relative saltiness. Breaks down denser aged cow's milk cheese. Complements younger, softer, more pungent cow's milk cheese. And one last one here, Prosecco and Parmesan. You got to mention Prosecco because you mentioned sparkling wine. I'm not a fan of Prosecco, but again, if you're matching anything out here, why not go with Parmesan? Kind of goes in the same vein. They're both Italian. Salty, depending on the Prosecco, because you can get some extra dry, slightly sweet Proseccos, and that might be my choice here. Now I have something here. Gewürztraminer and Morbier. Does anyone know what Morbier cheese is? I looked for it yesterday. Morbier cheese is a cheese that actually is put together. It has two layers, has a layer of ash in the middle, but it's named after Morbier in Burgundy. And I point this out because it's an important cheese. I would have loved to have had it here today. But look for it because it like in cheese tastings is a standard with that layer of black. It's flavorless, but again, it has that a mild earthy flavor. I think works well with Burgundy and or Champagne type wine. So I have one last thing to cover here. Almost done. You know, I've skull and crossbones up there. Do you know what I'm covering here, Marty?
No.
It's the one cheese.
Oh, from Sardinia.
Casa Marzu. Anyone familiar with this one? World's most dangerous cheese. It's illegal. It's from Sardinia, Italy. It's made from sheep's milk. It's actually now illegal even on Sardinia. EU has now made it illegal on Sardinia. Now it's made, I'm told, in the black, or what I read, in the black market, because it's known as an aphrodisiac. So, anytime there's a wedding, the locals bring out their local, Casa Marzu. Anyway, made from sheep's milk. Hang in there, guys. Yeah, the cheese is actually infested with live maggots. It's pecorino cheese, by the way, pecorino, and they infest it with live maggots. And they let it sit and cure for about 3 weeks. What happens is, after the crust is cut off, making it inviting for the flies to lay their eggs, left in the dark hut for about 2 to 3 months, eggs hatch into larvae. As the larva eats the rotting cheese, it passes through to their bodies, excretes, giving cheese a distinct flavor and texture. Robust flavor is said to be akin to ripe gorgonzola. Hang in there, but you know what the reality is, right, guys? You're eating larva excrement, right? So the larva has consumed the pecorino, has passed it through its system, and what you're eating then is okay. Now I'm going here, typically eaten when maggots are still alive. Why? Because dead maggots indicate that it's gone bad. Yeah, you're supposed to laugh at that because I sure as heck did, yeah. Since maggots are alive and wiggling, this only gets grosser. They can jump to great heights when disturbed, that your diners need to be mindful of their eyes when eating this delicacy. Remember, I told you this is illegal now, even on Sardinia. It's important to note that when consuming the cheese, the maggots must be chewed and killed before swallowing, or else they can live in your body and rip holes in your intestines. All right. Usually enjoyed on moistened flat bread with strong red wine. Are low on maggots, anyone? I'm sorry, and there's a picture, you can't get enough of my, it is what it is.
I was wondering if you were going to touch upon this.
Yeah, no. Now here, just to end this, guys, I'm going to end this on a good note. Here are really typical pairings that I can actually recommend and make. Sauvignon Blanc with goat cheese, Champagne with Camembert, that is a French cheese as well, Moscato with Gorgonzola, Moscato, and keep it on the lighter side, Cabernet with Gouda, back to aged Gouda, Tempranillo with Manchego, Gewürztraminer with Munster, not with an E, true Munster, or Morbier, Nebbiolo with Parmesan, again, or, what's that other Italian grape, Sangiovese? So, with Parmesan. Aglianico, we don't talk about Aglianico, but if you're talking Pecorino, it's a powerful cheese, so is Aglianico a powerful grape. Pinot Blanc is recommended with triple cream Bries. Chardonnay with mild cheddars, and maybe a Syrah with a smoked cheddar, okay? And what'd you say? If it grows together, it goes together. Did you hear that? Outstanding. And this is the wine appreciation guide, the cheese guide that I pretty much cored this around, guys. If you have any questions, here are all the resources that I used. There are museums, National Historic Cheese Making Center, Cheese Science. Cheese Science is off the charts. You want to know anything and everything about cheese making, it's on that site. And obviously cheese.com, you can't go wrong, right? And if you want to know everything about Parmesan Reggiano, all these are great sites. As I mentioned earlier, if to follow up on more food pairings, look at the Vintrinsic for additional resources as well. So, and I'm sorry, guys, I'm out of breath now.
Wow, you should be, Joe. Thank you very much. And for those of you who are still with us, I appreciate you We've actually lost a few along the way.
I bet.
But they're a loss. And if you don't belong to the Pennsylvania Wine Society, certainly jump on our website, PennsylvaniaWineSociety.org. We're a nonprofit. Check out our options for membership, monetary donations, sign up for our newsletter, and look at all of our upcoming events, because we have a plethora of things on the horizon. Joe mentioned that in 2 weeks, on August 8th, Sunday afternoon at 3:30, we will be doing Louis Jadot. We will have 3 different examples of Louis Jadot Chardonnay, and Joe will be doing the delivery on that. And then on August 22nd, 2 weeks after that, we'll be doing Paso Robles.
Paso Robles, yeah.
Not
It's a whole AVA update. If you know, in the past we've done these updates. Paso Robles in California has, in the last like 5 years, really gone through a lot of changes. So yeah, we'll be talking about some of them updates.
A couple other exciting things we have coming up. 2 weeks after that will be Megan Frank of Dr. Frank Winery, the great granddaughter of Dr. Frank, and she'll be with us on the virtual wine tasting, doing a live episode. And we'll get information out early enough so that everybody can join in with by ordering Dr. Frank wines. And the rest of the year we've got a sake presentation. We've got the Bonfi portfolio selection that Joe mentioned, and German wine labels with Joe and his mother-in-law, who is an actual authentic German who can interpret some of these wine labels for us. So that'll be sort of fun.
Pronunciation is critical sometimes in these German labels, and we can really butcher them. But yeah.
And thank you, Robin. Robin just thanked us. And then on Wine Wednesday next week, we've got Lynn already mentioned this early on. On Wednesday at 7, we're going to have fruit and dessert wines. And not to be, I hasten to add, don't be turned off and thinking that's just about sweet wines, although most dessert wines are sweet, but then again, they should be sweeter than their dessert that they're being paired with. And so there are a lot of fortified wines we can talk about. And beyond that, we're also still doing live events. We just started with Armstrong Valley Wines last weekend, which turned out to be a smashing success. And Waltz Vineyards is coming up next weekend on Saturday, July 31st. So bring a picnic lunch and join us. You'll have to go on our website and sign up. And then after that is Stony Run, followed by a sold-out event at Allegro with their cadenza tasting. So plenty of stuff coming up for anybody, whether you're a member or non-member of Pennsylvania Wine Society. You can join in with any and all of this stuff. And Joe, if you want to take the slide down, anybody that still remains, if you have any final questions for Joe, certainly feel free to ask. Looks like we've got a small handful of people still remaining. Stephen Casper, I don't recognize you from before, so maybe you've got something to add. Hallie Hope. Maybe you've got something that you'd like to add. Robin Downs. Anybody? Open up.
Jeez.
Push your space bar and you will be unmuted.
I have stemless wine glasses, or a stemless wine glass. I'm not a fan of them.
I'm not either.
Yeah.
I
I don't know why I said that, but maybe just to kill some of the dead space. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I see somebody crawling under a table, it looks like. Is that Hallie Hope? Well, at any rate, so we've killed enough. This has been, we ran over a little bit. There is something in the chat here. What does it say? Nice job all around, guys, from Stephen Casper. And I hope everybody can return for our next event in 2 weeks when we discuss Stephen Jadot. Or Stephen Jadot, yes. Louis Jadot.
Louis.
That's Stephen.
Well, Stephen's his brother.
All right. And join us on Wine Wednesday when we talk about fruit and dessert wines. Always sort of a fun thing. All right, until the next time, since there doesn't seem to be questions, thanks to everybody for joining in.